The smell of pine and gingerbread hung thick in the air of the Miller home, a cozy warmth against the biting West Virginia chill. It was Christmas Eve, 1945, and the house in Fayetteville buzzed with the eager anticipation of 9 children. George Miller, a strapping, hard-working man, chuckled as his youngest, little Susan, pulled at his pant leg, demanding another Christmas carol. Mary, his calm and loving wife, beamed, a picture of maternal contentment amidst the joyful chaos. Upstairs, 5 of the younger kids, Billy, Clara, Tommy, Jesse, and Susan, were finally tucked into bed, their dreams already filled with sugar plums and Santa. Downstairs, the older 4 nestled near the crackling fireplace, listening to the radio. It was a perfect idyllic scene, a slice of wholesome Americana on the cusp of a snowy holiday. Then, just after midnight, the nightmare began. A sudden, fierce crackle ripped through the stillness, followed by the acrid stench of smoke. Within moments, the old farmhouse became a living, breathing inferno. The fire erupted with terrifying speed, a beast devouring everything in its path. George and Mary, jolted awake by the heat and the screams, reacted instinctively, grabbing their older children and shoving them out windows, pushing them through doors. The chaos was absolute, a roaring furnace, thick, choking smoke, and the desperate cries of their little ones trapped upstairs. George scrambled to find his old ladder, usually propped against the side of the house. It was gone, vanished. Panic clawed at his throat. He ran to the phone, desperate to call for help, but the line was inexplicably dead. He cursed, running back into the smoke-filled yard. "The truck! The fire truck!" he screamed, remembering the emergency vehicle parked nearby, left over from a minor brush fire earlier in the day. He leaped inside, fumbling with the ignition, but the engine only coughed, sputtered, and died. It wouldn't start. It was as if every escape route, every means of salvation had been systematically cut off. Helpless, heartbroken, the Millers could only watch in agonizing horror as their beloved home, their very lives, became a towering beacon of flame against the dark, snowy sky. The last sound they heard was the faint, terrifying whimpers of their 5 youngest, swallowed by the roar of the blaze. As dawn broke on Christmas Day, the air was still thick with the acrid smell of smoke and despair. The Miller home was nothing but a smoldering, charred skeleton. Fire investigators arrived, solemn-faced, declaring the children had perished in the inferno. But as they sifted through the ruins, something deeply unsettling emerged. There were no remains. No bones, no teeth, no trace of the 5 small bodies. Nothing. It defied all logic, all science. The heat had been intense, yes, but not hot enough to vaporize human bone. A strange, almost metallic smell lingered. Not quite ash, not quite burnt wood, something alien and unsettling. Mary Miller, her face streaked with soot and tears, shook her head. "They're not in there," she whispered, her voice raw with grief and an unshakable conviction. "My babies aren't in there." And then the anomalies began. A neighbor, an old man named Silas, who rarely spoke, approached George, his eyes wide with fear. He swore he'd seen a mysterious, dark sedan idling down their quiet street earlier that evening, its engine running silently, then speeding away just as the first flicker of flames appeared. Even stranger, another eyewitness, a woman living miles away on the next ridge, reported seeing strange fireballs arcing through the sky over the Miller home shortly before the blaze began, silent and swift. The idyllic Christmas scene had evaporated, replaced by a chilling, impossible mystery. 5 children swallowed by fire, yet leaving no trace. This wasn't just a tragedy, it was a dark enigma, born on a silent, snowy Christmas Eve. The acrid scent of smoke still clung to everything, even weeks after the fire, a phantom reminder of the Christmas Eve horror. For the outside world, the case was closed. 5 Miller children perished in a tragic blaze. But for George and Mary Miller, their nightmare was just beginning. The lack of human remains haunted them, a cold, impossible void where their babies should have been. Mary especially was consumed by a mother's fierce, unyielding certainty. "My children are not ash," she'd repeat, her voice hollow, yet resolute. George, though burdened by the weight of their grief, never wavered in his support for her unwavering belief. The eerie silence of their ruined home was frequently shattered by bizarre, silent phone calls. They'd come at odd hours, always after George or Mary had dared to speak publicly about their ongoing search. A heavy click, then nothing but static, as if someone was listening, waiting. Promises of help from authorities or private investigators often fell through, their leads mysteriously running cold, their interest waning without explanation. It felt as if an unseen hand was deliberately obscuring the truth. About a year after the fire, a glimmer of hope, or perhaps a cruel mirage, appeared. A trucker, a gruff but honest man named Earl, contacted the Millers. He swore he'd seen 4 of their children at a greasy spoon diner hundreds of miles away in Oklahoma, accompanied by 2 unknown adults. Earl described them as looking disoriented, almost fearful, their eyes too wide, too silent for kids their age. Driven by this desperate lead, George immediately dispatched private investigators. They chased shadows across state lines, but just like every other lead, this one vanished into thin air, leaving behind only more questions and a deepening sense of dread. Local whispers, too, began to reach the Millers' ears, hushed rumors hinting at something far more sinister than a simple accident. George Miller, a man of strong convictions, had been known for his outspoken opposition to certain local figures, especially regarding questionable business dealings. He had recently had a heated dispute over a small trucking contract, a deal that was suddenly and inexplicably revoked. A subtle, almost imperceptible threat had been made against him just weeks before the fire. A chilling possibility began to form in Mary's mind. The fire wasn't accidental, but a brutal, terrifying message. A message sent by people with dark connections. People who, perhaps, had ties to something far more organized, far more ruthless than any local dispute. Driven by an enduring, almost unbearable hope, and the agonizing weight of mounting unanswered questions, the Millers made a drastic decision. They put up a massive billboard along Route 19, the main highway through West Virginia. It displayed the smiling faces of their 5 lost children, offering a substantial reward for any information. It became a permanent, haunting monument to their unending search, a silent, desperate plea to anyone who might know the truth. For decades it stood there, a beacon of enduring sorrow, a testament to a family's unbreakable spirit, and a chilling reminder of a mystery that refused to be forgotten. The flames had died, but the questions continued to burn. Decades crawled by, each year a fresh layer of dust on the Miller family's hopes, yet never quite extinguishing the burning questions. The billboard on Route 19, once a vibrant plea, now stood weathered and faded, its paint peeling, the children's smiling faces ghostly against the harsh West Virginia sun. It was a silent testament to a tragedy the world had forgotten, but the Millers never could. Then in the mid-1950s, a faint spark ignited. A simple postcard slipped discreetly into Mary Miller's mailbox. Her heart hammered as she stared at the photograph. A young man, perhaps in his late teens or early 20s, with an uncanny resemblance to her eldest missing son, Billy, now grown. On the back, scrawled in hurried, uneven handwriting, a cryptic message: Billy, I love brother Frankie. Elil Boys, A90132 or 35. It was postmarked from Kentucky. Mary gripped the card, a desperate, irrational hope battling against years of crushing disappointment. The Millers immediately hired Frank Hayes, a determined, aging private investigator with a reputation for tenacity and an almost obsessive pursuit of cold cases. A former police detective, Hayes had seen his share of dark corners. He followed the Kentucky lead, a winding trail that led him through dusty small towns and across forgotten back roads. He navigated a frustrating web of dead ends, evasive answers, and sudden, inexplicable silence from people who seemed to know more than they let on. His investigation pointed to a small, isolated orphanage with a history of unusual, almost too easy adoptions. Hayes finally tracked down the woman who had sent the postcard. He found her living in a rundown trailer, her eyes wide with a palpable terror. She was terrified, vague, and despite her obvious distress, she vehemently retracted her story, claiming it was all a mistake, a foolish prank. But as Hayes pressed, she couldn't meet his gaze, her voice dropping to a terrified whisper as she hinted at powerful, dangerous people involved, whispering about those who forget nothing and how some secrets were buried deeper than any grave. The conversation ended abruptly, leaving Hayes with a chilling certainty that she was hiding something far more sinister than she was willing to admit. Undeterred, Hayes consulted a trusted forensic expert regarding the postcard photograph. The expert, after careful analysis, confirmed a strong facial resemblance to Billy Miller. acknowledging the undeniable family traits. But the expert also advised extreme caution, emphasizing how easily such things could be faked or misinterpreted. However, one detail sent a cold shiver down Hayes' spine. The young man in the photo had a specific, almost hidden, scar on his right hand. It perfectly matched the description of a childhood injury Billy Miller had sustained, a deep cut from a broken toy. This wasn't just a resemblance, it was a near irrefutable piece of evidence. Driven by this breakthrough, Hayes began digging into the initial fire investigation. He uncovered disturbing facts. The local fire marshal, who had so hastily ruled the fire accidental despite the lack of remains, had surprisingly close ties to a powerful, corrupt political machine in West Virginia. Rumors had long swirled about this machine being heavily influenced by organized crime. The more Hayes dug, the clearer it became. The investigation into the Miller fire hadn't just been shoddy, it had been deliberately obstructed. The terrifying possibility that the children had been removed before the fire, not perished in it, gained chilling, undeniable traction. The flames had been a diversion, a smokescreen for a much darker plot, and the shadows in the sunlight were finally beginning to show their true, sinister forms. Frank Hayes felt the cold grip of a much larger, darker force tightening around him. The mafia connection wasn't just a rumor anymore. It was a palpable presence, breathing down his neck. The more he dug into the hasty fire investigation and the political ties of the former fire marshal, the more he realized he wasn't just looking for missing children. He was unearthing a carefully buried secret, protected by powerful people. He returned to the small, isolated orphanage in Kentucky, now seeing it not as a haven, but as a silent accomplice. He pushed harder, questioning staff, poring over dusty, incomplete records. The initial manager, a stern, unyielding woman, had suddenly retired shortly after the Miller's fire, replaced by someone new who seemed overly eager to dismiss Hayes' inquiries. Yet, through persistence, Hayes found subtle inconsistencies. Forged signatures on adoption papers, missing dates, and a peculiar pattern of children being placed with families far outside typical adoption channels, often in cash transactions. This wasn't just an orphanage, it was a clandestine network, its tendrils reaching from the hills of West Virginia all the way to the organized crime hubs of Chicago. Deep within a forgotten storeroom, tucked away in a brittle, leather-bound ledger marked Special Placements, Hayes found a faded, crudely taken photograph. It was a young boy, perhaps 6 or 7, his face solemn, almost too serious for his age. His eyes held a haunting blankness that sent a chill down Hayes' spine. And there it was, the exact scar pattern on his right hand, a thin, jagged line. It was indisputably Billy Miller. He was alive. The euphoria of the discovery was quickly overshadowed by a sickening dread. What had this boy endured? What were these children enduring? As Hayes got closer to the truth, the threats began. Anonymous phone calls at odd hours, the line dead when he answered, but a faint, chilling click before it disconnected. His tires slashed. A shadowed figure watching his office from across the street, disappearing when he turned to face it. He wasn't just pursuing a cold case. He was stepping on dangerous ground, disturbing a nest of vipers. He realized the reach of these unseen hands extended far beyond any local mobsters. They were connected, powerful, and ruthless. Driven by desperation, Hayes finally tracked down a frightened elderly woman named Clara May, once a low-level intermediary in the illegal adoption ring. He found her living under an assumed name in a small, isolated trailer park in rural Ohio, plagued by a lifetime of guilt. Her voice trembled as she confessed, in hushed tones, that the children had indeed been taken before the fire. It was a deal, she whimpered, orchestrated to send a brutal message to George Miller for crossing the wrong people. She spoke of a fixer, a cold, calculating man who handled all the details, ensuring no trace was left. She refused to give a name, her eyes wide with a primal fear. "He watches," she whispered. "He always watches." Armed with this terrifying confirmation, Hayes raced to the authorities, convinced they would act. But he hit a wall. His detailed evidence was met with indifference, then outright obstruction. Files went missing, witnesses became uncooperative, and higher-ups suddenly became unavailable. He realized the reach of these unseen hands extended even into law enforcement, silencing those who might help, protecting those who had orchestrated this unimaginable horror. The Miller family's hope, once a beacon, now hung by the thinnest, most fragile of threads. The children were out there, but they were beyond his reach, trapped in a shadow world of secrets and fear. Decades melted into the past, each year adding more lines to George Miller's weathered face, but never dimming the fire in his eyes. The billboard, now a ghost of its former self, stood as a faded, silent testament to a family's unbreakable, agonizing quest. Frank Hayes, the tenacious private investigator, had vanished from the Millers' lives years ago, swallowed by the frustrations of a case too big, too dark for one man. Then, one crisp autumn morning, a plain envelope arrived. No return address, just a single, anonymous tip inside. A name, Vincent, and an address in a quiet coastal town in Florida. It was a long shot, a needle in a haystack, but for George, it was a final, desperate flicker of hope. His heart heavy with a lifetime of unanswered questions, he embarked on the pilgrimage alone, a tired old man chasing a decades-old ghost. He found the address easily enough, a small, unassuming bungalow with a manicured lawn. A man answered the door, his face etched with the wariness of age, his eyes holding a profound sadness. It wasn't Billy, his oldest. Instead, a wave of recognition, a familiar flicker in the eyes, hit George like a physical blow. This man was Tommy, one of his younger missing sons, now in his late 60s. Tommy, living under a new identity, was visibly shaken, his initial confusion giving way to a bone-deep terror. He remembered fragments, the terrifying night of the fire, the confusing sensation of being taken from his home. He'd been separated from his siblings immediately, raised by a new distant family who kept him isolated, told him his old family had died. He'd seen the faded billboard over the years, a constant, haunting presence, but fear had kept him silent. He recognized George from those posters, a living ghost from a life he was told no longer existed. Slowly, hesitantly, Tommy confirmed the chilling truth. They had indeed been taken before the fire. He didn't know the full details or the exact fate of his other siblings. He remembered being bundled into a car, a suffocating blanket over his head, and the cold, unfeeling voice of a dark-suited man who came to their house often before the fire, talking to his father about protection and business arrangements. This fixer was the one who orchestrated it all. Tommy could offer no names, no organization, only a chilling confirmation that the threads of their past were controlled by unseen hands. George, his soul both soaring with discovery and crushed by the incomplete truth, pressed Tommy about the other siblings. Tommy flinched, his eyes wide with a primal fear. He revealed that the organization, whatever it was, still monitored them, still kept tabs. His new life, his new identity, was a fragile shield, threatened if he ever spoke out, if he ever tried to reconnect. He lived in constant, quiet terror. The truth, George realized, came with an unbearable cost, a permanent, agonizing separation, a life lived forever in the shadows. George returned to Fayetteville, his journey ending not with closure, but with a new layer of sorrow. He had found one son alive, but the full truth of the other's fates and the identity of the mastermind behind it all remained elusive, perhaps forever beyond reach. The original Miller home site was now a barren, overgrown plot, a quiet scar on the landscape. The billboard, now utterly weathered and faded, stood as a chilling testament to a family's eternal sorrow and the unyielding grip of a terrifying, unresolved mystery. The fire that Christmas Eve in 1945 had died out long ago. But the burning questions, the agonizing what-ifs, and the horrifying reality of what happened to the Miller children lived on, passed down through generations, a chilling reminder of what happens when you cross the wrong people, and the horrifying secrets that can be buried but never truly extinguished. The Sodder family tragedy wasn't just a fire, it was a testament to how deep the darkness can run.